Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us for today. My name is Elizabeth O'Brien, and I'm a co-founder and the head of research and curriculum at Family Engagement Lab. And I'm joined by my colleague, Hannah John Lee, who's a senior project manager. We're really excited to spend some time with you this morning to talk about how we can help our youngest readers by leveraging the power of families to support learning. So just some brief housekeeping before we start. The chat box will be open, as Sharon mentioned, to send any messages or questions to the hosts. And we may be able to answer some quick questions live during our session, but we're also planning to create a Q&A document that can contain some of the answers to questions that are asked during the presentations. And also, if you want to add your email address, if you want to be contacted directly, we'll plan to send that document to attendees next week. Everyone will be muted on the call, given the number of attendees. And then also, you'll find a PDF of our action plan worksheet in the Sketch app. We've also shared a Google Doc version that you can copy and work on directly with your team during the session. So if you can have that document handy, that would be really helpful for later in the session, as you'll have the opportunity to jot down some notes and start planning. So we'll also add the link to the Google Doc in the chat right now. So we're also going to be using slido.com for polls throughout today's session. So on your browser, either on your laptop or on your phone, if you can go to www.slido.com and enter the event code 54883, that would be wonderful. So you'll be ready for polls coming up. So I'll give everybody just a moment to pull that up. So we'll let you know when to pop into Slido for the polls coming up in our session.
Can you repeat those directions, please?
Sure. So just going to slido.com and then entering the event code 54883. All right. So we wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about who's joining us today. So thank you to everyone who completed our brief survey earlier this week. So we have folks who serve birth through 5 populations all the way up through serving high schoolers, with the majority of our attendees who are in that birth through 5 and early elementary age groups. Also, we asked respondents to weigh in on their favorite donut flavor, given the title of our presentation and the fact that it just so happens to be National Donut Day today. So it looks like Original Glazed was the most popular donut for this group, though we had some really great and interesting write-ins. So thanks again to everybody who entered that poll. And as we noted in the survey that we sent out, we'll also be doing a raffle. So we'll have 3 winners that we'll announce at different points throughout the session, with our first drawing happening right now. I'll turn it over to Hannah.
Great, so thanks to everyone who completed that brief survey and entered a chance to win the raffle prize. The first raffle prize winner for today's session is Joyce Moore from East Baton Rouge Parish. So congratulations. We'll be contacting you with the email that you provided in that Google participant form earlier this week so that you can redeem your choice of a $20 gift card from Amazon, Walmart, or Starbucks.
Wonderful. So before we dive into our content, we wanted to share a little more about our organization and our work. So Family Engagement Lab is a national nonprofit organization that increases student learning at home through FAST Talk, which stands for Families and Schools Talk, which is a tool for teachers that sends curriculum-aligned messages to pre-K through 8th grade families in their home language. FAST Talk's model was developed through innovative partnerships with the Oakland Unified School District, as well as the Louisiana Department of Education. FAST Talk is an award-winning program that's recognized by leading academic institutions, including those listed here. Since launching in 2017, families of more than 22,000 students are receiving FAST Talk messages to support their child's learning at home. And through multiple studies, FAST Talk has been shown to accelerate student learning across elementary grades, with the greatest benefits achieved for students furthest behind. So today, as we face a new educational landscape with unique challenges like meeting the diverse needs of students who've had a range of educational opportunities and learning experiences over the recent months, it's really critical to deepen our understanding of evidence-based practices and what works, especially when it comes to effectively supporting the success of young readers. So we're excited to share more about a key lever that's often underutilized, despite a substantial research base supporting its effectiveness, and that is family engagement. So our goal for today is to share research-based tips that you can leverage and apply in order to advance equitable early learning outcomes through high-impact family engagement. We want to help build your capacity to take action and implement new strategies and ideas that can help our youngest readers thrive. So I'll turn it over to Hannah to share an overview of what we'll be covering during our session today.
Great, thank you. So we really appreciate you being here and value the opportunity to be speaking with you today. So let's dive right in. Here's a quick overview of today's session on supporting our youngest readers using data, not donuts. And first, we'll review the importance of engaging families to impact learning outcomes and talk about families as an integral component of implementing evidence-based literacy support practices. And we'll highlight an example of a tool called Fast Talk that provides high-impact family engagement tips to promote literacy. Then we'll provide some key considerations for equitable family engagement opportunities using insights that we've gathered from teachers and parents during the recent school closures. Keep your action plan tool open because we'll be taking some time to reflect throughout today's session, but we'll also leave some dedicated time at the end for more reflection and planning to think about the most appropriate and effective ways to communicate with families in your community. So we've chosen to focus in on family engagement as a key lever for supporting our youngest readers. So let's take a minute to understand why. Family engagement is one of the strongest indicators of student success and has always been a critical lever for advancing equitable outcomes. Parents, particularly in high poverty communities, have a strong desire to support their child's learning, but often don't know how. And language barriers, a lack of time, limited knowledge of ways to support learning at home can really limit parent-teacher collaboration, especially for our most vulnerable student populations. Parents of English language learners in particular report receiving less communication from schools than non-EL parents, despite being just as likely to want their children to succeed academically. And with the opportunity gap widening already, and given the COVID slide, it is imperative for schools to take collective action to equitably and meaningfully engage families and tap into the full potential of all families to support learning outcomes. Decades of research has shown that parents' involvement in student learning makes a meaningful difference. And in fact, it has more than twice the impact on student test scores than the parent's educational background or even income. And other benefits of parent involvement include increased attendance, increased graduation rates, and lifelong benefits like improved social skills. So with more guidance and active support from schools, all parents have the power to help children to make significant gains in academic achievement. Families are key to improving student learning outcomes, but need critical information from teachers to engage. And this is what we'll be really focusing on today. How can we, as educators, create the conditions through which families and schools can most effectively partner to support learning outcomes for our youngest readers?
Great. So we've shared a little bit about the power and potential of family engagement, especially during our current educational reality. Now, you may be wondering about the title of our presentation and what does it mean to say we need to use data and not donuts when we think about family engagement and supporting the success of our youngest readers. So what we're talking about here is that when it comes to involving families to impact learning outcomes, the data around high impact family engagement points to a number of key activities and strategies that move the needle for student achievement. And bringing parents in for donuts isn't at the top of that list. So what are high impact family engagement activities? I want everyone to take a look at this list, which includes a number of strategies. Think about which stand out to you as particularly high impact. Which are more likely to have a positive impact on student learning? I'll give everyone a moment to take a look at these different activities. So we'd love to see what your thoughts are here. So we have a poll we'd like you to answer on Slido. So please open that back up. and answer the following question on Slido. Which of the following are high impact family engagement strategies? So I'll give everyone a moment to get into Slido and answer that question. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of votes for regularized personalized communication. All right. Let's see. All right, still that's by and large ahead. Great, I'll give another 10 or 15 seconds people to vote. Great. All right, thank you all. So I'm seeing really, we can see that regular personalized communication is something many of you are really identifying as one of those high impact family engagement strategies. So this is what we know about higher impact versus lower impact strategies. The strategies that are more effective have the following characteristics. They're relational and collaborative, they build capacity, and they're directly linked to student learning. So you can see that the activities that fall further to the left are more one way. They aren't collaborative or interactive, so things like generic newsletters, and they're not as focused on student learning, so things like potlucks. And they also don't build parents' capacity to support learning, so activities like performances and celebrations. So let's zero in for a moment on those characteristics that our high impact activities have in common. And you all did a good job identifying some of those. So they're relational and collaborative. They allow for two-way interactions and joint problem solving and partnership between educators and families. They also build the capacity of educators and families. So they can build capabilities like skills and knowledge, connections. They can build cognition, like different beliefs and values, and also build confidence and self-efficacy. And third on our list, they're really clearly connected to student learning. So as we think about what works when it comes to family engagement, it's important to also note that parents really want key information about learning from teachers. They are parents' most trusted source of information about student learning. And teachers also recognize the value of families, and especially in high needs communities, they want help to effectively engage families. So what happens when there isn't this regular exchange of information with families that's centered around learning? Well, in addition to limiting parents' capacity to support that at-home learning, the lack of information can lead to critical misperceptions. So here you can see that around 90% of parents surveyed think that their children are at or above grade level. But the data show that in reality, not even 40% are hitting that mark. So that's a really meaningful gap. And that misinformation, it affects how and what supports families provide. So it's really critical that families have an accurate understanding of how their children are doing if they're going to appropriately support their child's learning at home. Okay, so we know that ongoing reciprocal communication centered around student learning is key. Now let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So what are the characteristics of effective homeschool communication? So first, families want convenience. They want information and action steps that they can easily integrate into their everyday activities. Second, they want push, not search. They have a lot on their plates, so they want the most important information sent directly to them. Next is personalization. Families want information that is customized for them and for their children. Timeliness. So this means that information needs to come at the right time. So for example, if families want to engage with their children around rhymes and poems when their children are discussing rhymes and poems in their classrooms at school. Effective communication also recognizes that parents are busy. So I don't think this one needs any additional explanation. And the last characteristic we want to highlight is that families want and need that high impact information, just like the actionable strategies that have been shown to support positive learning outcomes that we mentioned earlier. Information about a bake sale is not high impact, whereas sending actionable tips for supporting learning at home really is high impact. So now I want to take a moment and let you all reflect on your current communication practices with families. So feel free to jot down a few notes on your computer or notepad. Think about what homeschool communication looks like for you right now. And going through this list that we've just covered, you consider which of these characteristics do you regularly incorporate into your practices? Now also think about those that you may have focused less on when it comes to communicating with families. So we'd love to get a sense of the virtual room here. So if you could please open Slido up again for a poll and just share with us, which of these characteristics do you want to improve upon for the fall? Which might need more attention or time? Where's there that most room for growth? Things are coming in. All right, we've got high impact information trending right now. Great. Personalization. Great. So just thinking how you can get that high impact information out to families and make it personalized, really relevant and timely. Okay, neat. I'll give a little bit more time for the responses to come in. Great. So maybe convenience and realization of business are things people are doing really well on. Great. I'll give a few more seconds. And thank you all. All right, wonderful. Thank you for sharing there. All right. So we'll be revisiting some of these characteristics later. Hannah, I'm going to turn it over to you now for another raffle winner.
Awesome. So before we reveal the second raffle prize winner, take some time to stand up, stretch, take in all the information that has been presented so far, because we're going to be diving even deeper here in a bit. But for our second raffle prize, the winner is Amy King from Ascension Parish Public Schools. Congratulations. We will reach out by email to get you the gift card of your choice. So thank you so much for participating.
Great, wonderful, congrats. So let's transition now to talk more specifically about family engagement and its relationship with early literacy outcomes. So early childhood is truly a critical time period. It's also an exhausting time for families. Hannah and I both have 3-year-olds, so we can attest to that. But what's really, really so important about this time period is the opportunity that it presents. So just to be thinking, how can we help families promote positive early literacy experiences that put kids on a path to success? How can we establish the expectation that parents are really key partners from that first interaction that they have with educators? And then how can we provide key information to families that can set in motion those positive parental behaviors that have been shown to have a really meaningful impact on student outcomes? So these are some of the questions we need to be thinking about to really help our youngest readers succeed. So let's get even more specific about family engagement practices that support early literacy. Here are some evidence-based strategies. So the first here is around creating a literacy-friendly home environment. So these are places where you see books, you see text. The number of books in a family's home has been shown to be positively and strongly related to children's reading ability. And our literacy-friendly home environment is also one where you see joint storybook reading. You see parents engaging in parent-child literacy activities. Parents might be teaching letter names, talking about letter sounds, things like that. The second practice listed here really highlights the importance of ongoing and engaging conversations between parents and their children. The amount of language that children hear is another really powerful predictor, and it's related to vocabulary development and language understanding. And it's not just the amount of language that matters, it's that quality of the language used. So rich vocabulary, complex ideas, asking children why. The third strategy here is around ensuring families have high expectations for their children's literacy development. So these high expectations relate to gains in emerging literacy skills. That's another thing we should be thinking about. How can we help parents maintain really high expectations about young children's potential? How can we model and communicate that information to families? The fourth strategy here is around assisting families in making reading really enjoyable. We want to help families encourage a love of reading in their children. Engaging in warm, nurturing, and encouraging literacy interactions enhances children's growing literacy skills, and it can positively benefit adults by helping mitigate stress. Fifth, we have encouraging the use of families' home language. So children's language and literacy benefit by engaging with adults in the language that they are most confident and comfortable in. Communicating in a parent's home language also delivers benefits in terms of ethnic identity and improved relationships with caregivers. Lastly, we have homeschool communication. This is something we've talked a lot about so far. Really facilitating families' ability to communicate regularly with their child's teacher is key to putting children on a positive path towards developing those essential early literacy skills. So I'm going to turn things over to Hannah now as we share an example of setting some of these practices into motion with our partnership with LDOE.
Great. So we're going to transition in a moment to share more about a specific evidence-based tool for supporting early literacy development. But before we do that, we wanted to provide an opportunity for one of our partners at LDOE to talk a little bit more about the work that we've done together this past year to support positive early literacy outcomes by leveraging the power of families. So joining us today to share a little bit about our partnership is Brittany Braun, LDOE 619B coordinator. Brittany, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I am really excited to join this session today and share some examples of the ways that the department has partnered with Family Engagement Lab. So again, my name is Brittany Braun, and I work on the academic policy and early childhood team here at the department. And my role as a 619B coordinator focuses on children ages birth to 5 with special education, as well as some K-2 literacy work. So in the 1920 school year, the LDOE partnered with 5 districts, and we launched the Early Identification or Early ID Lighthouse pilot. And one of the goals of this pilot focused on developing a screening, assessment, referral, and evaluation process in order to improve child find for children birth to 5. As part of that effort, pilot participants developed strategies and effective ways to engage families so that we could really dig into supporting children across these key transition points. And with the support of Family Engagement Lab, our pilot participants utilized this fast talk model that they're going to dive into a little bit further along this presentation. And it was a way to ensure that families were able to receive ongoing text messages every week and access information that related to key developmental milestones and activities that would reinforce and connect their child's learning at home. Through this partnership and our pilot, our cohort found that this ability to really streamline communication regarding developmental milestones, curriculum, and standards, and connect all of that information to the specific activities that children were learning in school just generated an overwhelmingly positive response from both teachers and families. And it really provided that predictable and ongoing homeschool connection that we recognize as critical for academic success, especially for our youngest learners. And I think it's really important to note as we reflect on the current state and this continuous need to find innovative ways to keep families engaged and involved with everything that they are juggling right now. We are really excited to continue our partnership with Family Engagement Lab and explore additional ways that we can bridge this homeschool connection. If you'd like to stay updated on the Early ID pilot programs and our focus on Family Engagement Lab and just family engagement in general, you can contact me. And additionally, we had to adjust some of our sessions for the virtual summit this week, but we will be preparing fall sessions that are related to our early ID work and share more about our partnership with Family Engagement Lab. And we look forward to your participation in those this upcoming fall. And with that, Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right, great. So thank you so much, Brittany. We're really excited too. And as Brittany mentioned, preschool teachers in DeSoto Parish and Lincoln Parish this past year successfully engaged their students' families through their early ID pilot by sending weekly high-impact tips and activities to support ongoing one-on-one parent-child conversations centered around learning. So how did they do this? Through Family Engagement Lab's tool called Fast Talk, or Families in Schools Talk. So for this next section, I'll briefly go over Fast Talk's features and share Fast Talk's impact on student achievement. Fast Talk is an easy text messaging tool for teachers to engage families in at-home, high-impact activities, reinforcing key literacy and developmental skills, which is especially important for diverse learners, including students with disabilities and English learners who may need additional support and scaffolding. And starting early is so important. So by building parents' knowledge base of what their children are learning and should be able to do in early childhood, we'll put kids on a path with the rich vocabulary and mastery of foundational language and literacy skills needed to be independent and successful later in life. Fast Talk is research-based and modeled after a Stanford study where preschool students whose parents received learning-focused messages through text message over a 9-month period, they entered the next school year 2 to 3 months ahead in literacy outcomes compared to their peers whose parents received general non-academic text messages. As in the research study, Fast Talk delivers curriculum-aligned SMS text messages to caregivers to provide those small, digestible tips for families to reinforce what's being taught by the teacher as an active partner. So here's just some of Fast Talk's features. Through Fast Talk, families will receive weekly curriculum-aligned activities sent through text message to support their child's social, emotional, and academic success. And the activities are fun, and it's really easy for busy families to do anytime and anywhere, and it's delivered in their home language. We make Fast Talk feasible for busy teachers by pre-scheduling the text messages. And from the moment the children start school, Fast Talk strengthens the parent-teacher relationships because the text messages are coming from the teacher and prompt ongoing communication about learning through Fast Talk's translated two-way chat messaging feature. The goal of Fast Talk is to extend high-quality instruction from the classroom into the home and bring awareness to parents around language and literacy connections so that they can really build upon that knowledge through positive one-on-one interactions at home. It's also an opportunity for parents to ask their child's teacher any questions or concerns that may come up using the Fast Talk's two-way messaging tool. So parents will receive a pre-scheduled curriculum-aligned text message 3 times a week. So typically on Mondays, parents will receive a message that describes a specific skill or focus area that the child is learning. Then on Wednesdays, parents will receive a message that contains an easy game-like activity or question stem that helps them easily dialogue with their child with topics that are relevant to what's being taught by the teacher. And on Fridays, parents will receive a quick poll to respond to provide feedback, and that information is also available to the teacher so that they can monitor parent engagement rates in a really easy way. The messages are developed to relate to class learning each week. So here's just an example of a week of Fast Talk messages aligned to the Frog Street preschool curriculum. This particular example is focused on supporting stories and rhymes. So it may say something like on Monday, from Miss B, we're exploring stories and rhymes this month. Acting out a story can help children understand the story and its characters. And on Wednesday, parents will receive from Miss B. This week, role play a favorite story with your child. Talk about what the characters did and said, and then act it out together. Then on Friday, it'll say something like from Miss B, I value your feedback. Please let me know if you tried this week's activity. So let's take a moment to reflect and pull out that action plan tool. And on the first page, you'll see all the reflection questions laid out that we'll be going through during today's session. But if you could scroll down to where it's highlighted, how are you providing parents with concrete tips to help that are practical and actionable? If you make a copy of this Google Doc to jot down your own thoughts, or if you just want to follow along, you'll see that one of our colleagues will be jotting down some notes here at the same time that you'll be working on this. It may also be helpful to think back more recently to the school closures and record some of the ways that you may have simplified information and ideas for parents to support reading and writing during distance learning. So take some time to reflect. How are you providing parents with concrete tips to help that are practical and actionable? Yeah, if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to make a copy of the Google Doc so that you can jot down your own thoughts and share it with others on your team if you want to make it a collaborative reflection planning session. And we're going to be revisiting this document throughout this session, so please keep it handy. But let's now talk about some of the feedback from teachers and parents. So nearly all parents and teachers reported that Fast Talk is positively impacting student learning. And teachers were seeing their students' confidence improve because Fast Talk allowed the students to practice skills at home prior to contributing to class discussions. And it was also a way for teachers to provide parents with tangible ways to help without teachers having to spend a ton of time creating the resources themselves. For parents, the Fast Talk text messages boosted their own confidence in being able to support their child's reading and writing, and were able to better understand and stay informed for enhanced communication with their child's teacher. I love when I hear stories of how positive parent-teacher relationships benefited the student as well. Recently, I spoke to one parent from Calcasieu Parish, and she was telling me how her kids noticed that she was more aware of what's going on. So she looked forward to receiving the Fast Talk text messages, because when she asks her kids questions about specific vocab words that they learned, her kids will say, "How did you know?" So it was really good for her to know ahead of time, because if her kids didn't know how to explain it, she had a heads up and could ask about what they learned. So you may be used to measuring the success of your family engagement efforts by looking at attendance rates at in-person events, but simple, targeted, accessible communication about academics can be extremely powerful and a cost-effective way to move the needle on student outcomes. Here's just a quick look at some of the results that we've seen over the last 2 years. And as you can see, those kindergarten students in the classrooms using Fast Talk in the greenish teal color, they significantly improved their performance from the fall to the spring semester. And the Fast Talk students actually started the school year below the district's average, but ended up outpacing the district's average in ELA performance by spring. Fast Talk has also been shown to accelerate the learning of students by half a month to a month in most cases. But more importantly, the impact was most pronounced for students whose families who did not share the same language with their teacher, with an accelerated performance of 1.5 to nearly 3 months ahead of their peers not using Fast Talk. And this is because the Fast Talk messages breaks down communication barriers and meets parents where they are, providing accessible, timely information from a trusted source, the teacher, and it's in the parent's home language. We also hear of Spanish-speaking families expressing gratitude towards their teacher for improving their Spanish skills thanks to the Fast Talk translations. So let's take a minute to turn back to that action plan worksheet again and think about the second question on the grid under the reflection questions. And if you could take a moment to reflect and jot down any thoughts here, how can you overcome language barriers to make sure that you're reaching all parents equitably. How can you provide parents with the vehicle for starting meaningful conversations with their child about what they know and should be able to do in their home language? And maybe there's family liaisons or EL coordinators at your school site who can help bridge gaps or facilitate communication with culturally and linguistically diverse families. Take a moment to think about the language needs in your community. Jot down any thoughts. Wonderful. So we also wanted to share some student data on outcomes in later elementary grades. And as you can see, the Fast Talk students started this school year scoring lower than their peers on their assessments and ended the year ahead. And Fast Talk was found to increase achievement among 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in redesigned schools, Louisiana and Baton Rouge, with 2.6 times the literacy gains compared to a matched comparison group of non-Fast Talk students. And the program's impact was found to be statistically significant. Fast Talk can also help districts see accelerated gains when adopting new high-quality curriculum, as was experienced this past year in DeSoto Parish in Louisiana, where they piloted both the expeditionary learning curriculum and Fast Talk and found meaningful student growth. In their early literacy screener, the students that were below proficient in oral reading fluency scores dropped from 32% to 24% from fall to winter. So again, Fast Talk is one example of how to improve literacy outcomes through high impact family engagement because it's coupled with effective homeschool communication methods and delivers the tips in an accessible, equitable way. I'm going to turn things back to Elizabeth now to share more data in the context of distance learning considerations.
Great, thanks, Hannah. So with this shift in roles and responsibilities that educators and families have and may continue to experience as a result of school closures, we want to talk a little bit about family engagement and distance learning. So while school-home communication has really always been extremely important, it's become especially critical during these recent months. And while challenging, the school closures have provided an opportunity for schools to develop robust communication plans beyond recovery, and that's really exciting. It's a time to use the momentum from school closures to make regular communication and high-impact family engagement a permanent part of your work. So in late April and early May, we launched a large survey with some Fast Talk users. We were curious to learn more from the teachers and families that we work with about their wants and needs and experiences during the school closures. So we ended up serving a sample of over 700 pre-K through 5th grade families and almost 100 teachers. We wanted to share a few survey insights with you today so you could learn more about what has been really top of mind for families and educators during the recent shifts to distance learning. Great. So one of the questions that we asked both parents and teachers in the survey is, what type of text messages would be most helpful for parents right now? So both parents and teachers thought that ways to support a child's reading and writing would be helpful to parents. You can see that in those first two bars. But we observed some other major differences in what teachers think parents would find helpful and what parents themselves report they would find helpful. As you can see, parents were far less likely than teachers to say that SEL support would be helpful. Another key difference between parents and teachers was that more parents responded that tips on how to check whether their child was at grade level or slipping behind would be really helpful information right now. And then the largest difference we saw was in parents and teachers' value for information on how to support parental well-being. So these findings suggest that despite the major hurdles that parents have been facing, parents still highly value information to support their children staying on track in school. We also analyzed the parent responses by home language. So you can see here that Spanish-speaking parents were far more likely than English-speaking parents to respond that ways to support reading and writing skills and those tips to check whether their child is at grade level would be really helpful right now. And the full survey results are available on our website on the Fast Talk Summer page if people are interested in diving more into some of the data we collected. So in our survey, we also asked parents about their preferred ways to stay in touch with the teacher. So you can see the different response options there we provided. You can see here that text messages and email were at the top of the list in terms of preferences. When we break down our results by language here, we can see that text messaging was especially preferred by Spanish-speaking families. Also, in that email section, you can see that there's a big gap between email preferences between English and Spanish-speaking parents. So I want to pause here for a moment too and allow everyone to take a second to reflect, about what are families' communication preferences in your community. So Hannah's got that action plan document opened again, and so I encourage you all to take some notes here, thinking, what are families' communication preferences? Great, and I'm just seeing, noting parents might have multiple preferences. So thinking, what kind of data too are you using to understand families' preferences? Remember, data, not donuts. And how are you learning about families' preferences across these areas? So thinking of that email, text messaging, when you're gathering information from families, is the feedback really representing the diversity of your community? So just some things to be thinking about. I'll give everyone another little bit to just jot down some thoughts in the action plan in that top box. Great. Thank you all. Things are filling up here on this sheet. So we want to take a moment now to just step back and look at some of the key considerations that we've mentioned, and also take some time to reflect on how to apply some of these learnings to your own work. So we've talked a lot today about technology and how it can be especially valuable and especially critical right now. So using text messages, for example, can facilitate many of those high impact family engagement strategies. So like that collaboration through two-way messaging, it can build parents' capacity by translating tips for supporting at-home learning. And it can really support many of the effective homeschool communication characteristics. So those things like the timeliness, recognizing families' busyness, pushing information instead of relying on families to search for it. And importantly, it can create a low lift solution for educators and for families. So let's open back up our doc. And as you think about your family engagement practices, what strategies will you use to ensure your solution is easy for educators and families? Because we know that's so critical to getting something off the ground. So I'll give everyone a moment to jot down some ideas there. How can you make things really easy for the families and for teachers and schools? Great. Thank you all. I wish I could see everyone's screen right now. Wonderful. Great, we'll give a few more seconds for this one. All right. So we also want to highlight here that it's important to consider the technology trends that are happening, especially in our current reality where it's important to have a number of mechanisms for connecting with families that may not be face-to-face. So while cell phone use is ubiquitous, other technology use like visual social media, things like YouTube, is on the rise with families. It's important to consider your specific parent community given the diverse uses of technology across multiple generations within parent communities. So for example, here we've just highlighted, you can see that millennial parents were much more likely to be using Instagram, for example, than baby boomer parents. Great. So while technology can help overcome some key barriers to effective family engagement, you all really are the experts in your community. So you really know what's more likely to work and not work for families that you work with. So we'll take a moment now to reflect on the specific needs and opportunities in your school community. So on this slide and the next one, I have all of those reflection questions that are listed on page 1 that we've been working on. So many of them we've answered throughout the session. So let's focus here on the third question. How can you establish and maintain equitable school-home communication given the uncertainty around distance learning in the fall? Great, so I'm gonna see Hannah's highlighting that one there on the action doc. Let's give some time now to jot down some notes in response to that question. So maybe thinking about some of the strategies we've mentioned today, what do you want to try out given the current circumstances? This is a big question. Great, I'll give another few seconds to wrap up some notes in this file. Great. Great, thank you all. So let's zero in here on the first 2 questions listed. What do you need to do to make high impact literacy resources accessible for families? And that next question about how are you helping parents understand whether their child is at grade level? So making it accessible and providing that really key information. We know parents are especially interested in this type of information. And there was that really big gap between where parents think their children are in terms of their academic performance and where they actually are. So we'll just, group these 2 questions here on the action plan doc and take some time for people to jot down a few ideas.
Hannah, this is Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon?
You have a couple questions in the chat box.
Yeah, we're actually going to be compiling all of the questions into a
Okay.
Q&A document to send out to everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Great. We'll just give another minute or two for people to jot down some notes. I know if we were in person, I would love to be walking around the room, seeing what kind of ideas are coming out. So thank you all just for taking the time here to be thinking through some of these reflection questions. Give one more. All right, wonderful. Well, I will turn things over to Hannah now, and hopefully these reflection questions will really help as we dive into the action plan.
Wonderful. So keep that document open because we really want to help you create something useful. So let's move on to that second page of the action plan. And we know there's no one size fits all family engagement solution. So really take time to think about your community, your schools, and build upon the strengths and identify where there's room for growth. So to set your goal, take a look at the data that's available to you, whether it's student level assessments or if you have opportunities to survey or interview the families and teachers in your community, collect the data and examine your own community's needs. You may find that after looking at the data, your goal might be to adopt formal, evidence-based interventions to support families around early literacy, or maybe the data showing that you discover a larger need for a district-wide initiative and structure around family engagement. Next, think about what's going well and why. Perhaps your most well-attended event was the family literacy night or the Donuts with Dad event, but strategies that may have worked well in previous years may not work as well for the upcoming year. And it might help to examine why certain methods of communication with families were successful, especially during the recent school closures. And maybe were you able to reach the most families during meal and packet pickups and not as much through the Google Class or Zoom? Think about what works well and why for your community. Next, moving down the tool, what's something new that you've always wanted to try? If there's one thing that I've learned from the recent school closures, it's how creative teachers and parents are at solving problems. And then think about those 6 characteristics of effective school-home communication and which ones that you want to zero in on when you're implementing your new strategies. Then also think about who do you need to bring into your conversations to come up with your action plan. I know that when I'm working with schools and school systems to implement Fast Talk, I find that the most successful rollouts involve multiple stakeholders that are engaged early in the planning process. So we often get the school leaders involved, sometimes the master teachers, the family community managers, curriculum leads, even the EL coordinators, all involved to get Fast Talk off the ground. So think about others that you may need to collaborate with. Maybe you have a team of teachers that you work closely with, or if you have a PTO who can serve as the parent voice, or maybe you have an office manager who's amazing and who has the most face time with families and can help with logistics. And if you're not the decision maker, think about who is and who might help, how might you incorporate parent voices into the decision-making process. Next, think about the resources that you might need to successfully carry out these new strategies. So do you have a linguistically diverse population at your schools and may need additional resources to support language translation? Or do you have some resources already that you can integrate to strengthen and align to support your most vulnerable students? Next, while you're planning, think about the short-term and long-term outcomes and how might you move forward with the plan to involve parents that's sustainable and scalable. So how are you going to keep families engaged and maintain these strong partnerships as they transition through each grade level? And we're all about data. So it's really important to be thinking about how you're going to be tracking and evaluating the success of your plan. And getting any program or initiative off the ground requires collaborative effort. So we really encourage you to make a copy of the action plan tool, the Google Doc, if you haven't done so already, and make it your own. Share it with others at your site as a helpful conversation starter and a live planning tool, and just run with it and take advantage of this time to develop a comprehensive family engagement plan that fits your community.
All right. We're at our final thoughts section here. So we just want to thank you all for joining our session today. We've really enjoyed the opportunity to share key research-based strategies for engaging families to support early literacy. And we hope that you can walk away with an understanding of the differences between data and donuts when it comes to engaging families to really meaningfully affect early literacy outcomes. I wanted to note too, we've seen some questions come in via Slido, but also using the Zoom chat is a great way for us to compile those questions so that we can put together the answers and share those back out with everyone. Before signing off too, we wanted everyone to open Slido for one final time because we have a final question as we'd love to know what kind of feelings you're walking away with. So what one word would you use to describe how you're feeling about your new ideas for engaging families? All right, let's see how this word cloud is being generated here. Excited is looking big right now. I'm positive. Inspired, hopeful, motivated. Positive's getting bigger. Optimistic, encouraged. Nice. Text, I like that. Motivated, hopeful. Let's see what else we got. More confident. Oh, it's wonderful. Calm, that's a great way to enter into it too. Inspired. This is really exciting to see. Reflective and call to action, great. I'll give another little bit for some words to pop in. Determined, great. Thrilling. Doable, that's really important too, great. Still coming in, a couple more coming. Neat. Refreshed, that's great. Wonderful. Well, this is really encouraging to see, and we're so glad to this and appreciative that you all are interacting in this way, giving us some of this feedback. We'll have to save this word cloud, Hannah. Great. All right. Well, we also wanted to share some of our contact information. We really would love to stay in touch and connect. I think there's some questions about FastTalk, so we'd love to share more information about that and answer any questions specifically that you all may have. And to hear more about our research and FastTalk, you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And we have a monthly family engagement learning series that covers different topics each month. So you can view some of the past issues at our website at familyengagement.lab.org. And we'd really love to stay in touch and hope you all will be reaching out. And I'll turn it back to Hannah for our final raffle drawing that will complete our session today. So thanks again.
Great. So for our third and final raffle prize, the winner is Valika Gray from Washita Parish. Thank you so much. We'll reach out by email to get you the gift card that you would like to choose. And congratulations to all three winners of today's raffle. Thank you all so much for participating in today's session. We hope that even if you didn't get a gift card, that you're still able to walk away with a useful tool to engage your families with data-driven plans this upcoming school year. And hopefully everyone can enjoy a donut today on National Donut Day. And before you leave, we would really appreciate if you could just take a moment to leave your feedback through the Teacher Leader Summit app. Again, we'll compile all the questions that came through the chat box and through Slido to create a Q&A document that we'll send out next week. So thanks again and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.